Hello and good evening. Welcome to World Today, a 60-minute power pack show which will be from here on your daily window to the world. I am Anil Thomas. On the show tonight, the latest on the Taliban Afghanistan government standoff, an update on the growing forest fires across the world and the dangers of vaccine hesitancy that could lead to children getting affected in America. We've got much more over the next 1 hour, but first up, our headlines. Clashes escalate between Afghan forces and Taliban, with 27 killed and 136 more wounded in the past 2 days. India begins evacuating its diplomats and nationals from Mazar-e-Sharif. US envoy for Afghanistan in Doha to press the Taliban to stop their military offensive and to negotiate a political settlement. World witnesses erratic climatic conditions. Fires burn unabated in many parts of Greece, with the largest front of the island of Eva raging wildfires in Northern California, now the second largest recorded in state history. Bolivia wildfires are sweeping across eastern lowlands. Battle against COVID-19 continues across the world. More than 20 crore 43 lakh people infected by the virus. Over 18 crore 34 lakh people recover. Deadly virus claims over 43 lakh 20,000 lives worldwide. United States continues to be the worst affected. World Lion Day celebrated with an emphasis to raise awareness on lions conservation. Prime Minister greets nations, saying that in the last few years India has seen a steady increase in the lion's population. And Athletics Federation of India felicitated Olympic champions Neeraj Chopra, Avinash Sable and Asian record holder men's in 4x400 meters relay team. Gold medalist Neeraj Chopra says Prime Minister Modi is his inspiration. Well, let's begin with the big news. Well, the combination of US over-the-horizon military capabilities and the Afghan security forces appear to be no match for Taliban fighters in Afghanistan. The Taliban continue to beat back better equipped and more numerous government troops in a bid to exert control over the war-torn country. US officials, meanwhile, called the situation on the ground in Afghanistan deeply concerning, pointing to the Taliban's takeover of 6 provincial capitals in a 72-hour period, something that has not gone unnoticed at the Pentagon.
Fighting has escalated between the Afghan forces and the Taliban. The rising violence in the country is taking a devastating toll on children, with 27 killed and 136 wounded in just the past 2 days. Afghanistan security forces conducted airstrikes against the Taliban in Kandahar province, in which at least 47 Taliban members have been killed and 25 were injured, according to a statement by the Afghanistan Defense Ministry. The statement added that 2 shelters, 1 vehicle and a large number of weapons and ammunition have been destroyed. The Taliban claims to have taken control of a gate to Aibak, the northern provincial capital of Samangan. Taliban spokesperson Zabihullah Mujahid posted a video showing about half a dozen men with weapons by a gate with traffic passing by. The Pentagon said that the security situation in Afghanistan was not going in the right direction, as the Taliban captured a 6th provincial Afghan capital.
The Secretary shares the concern of the international community about the security situation in Afghanistan, which is clearly not going in the right direction. The Secretary continues to believe that the Afghan forces have the capability, they have the capacity to make a big difference on the battlefield. He has maintained that we will continue to support them with the authorities we have where and when feasible, understanding that it's not always going to be feasible. But where and when feasible, we'll continue to support them with airstrikes, for instance.
US envoy for Afghanistan Zalmay Khalilzad has left for Qatar, where he will press the Taliban to stop their military offensive and to negotiate a political settlement. In talks over 3 days, representatives from governments and multilateral organizations will press for a reduction of violence and a ceasefire and a commitment not to recognize a government imposed by force, according to the US State Department. The Taliban, fighting to reimpose strict Islamic law after the 2001 ouster, have stepped up their campaign to defeat the government as foreign forces withdraw. India on Tuesday began evacuating its diplomats and nationals from Mazar-e-Sharif in northern Afghanistan, following reports of the advance of Taliban fighters amid a violent assault by the group on key cities and urban centers. The Indian consulate in Mazar-e-Sharif, which was the only fully functional consulate out of India's 4 consulates across Afghanistan, on Tuesday asked Indian nationals to take the special evacuation flight. Meanwhile, Pakistan is accelerating fencing along the Afghan border as the withdrawal of US and NATO troops from Afghanistan enters its final phase. Amid looming uncertainty in Afghanistan due to the withdrawal of foreign troops and the Taliban gaining territory, Pakistan aims to complete the fencing within this year. The Taliban have taken dozens of districts and border crossings in recent months and placed pressure on several provincial capitals, with the insurgents overrunning 3 provincial capitals, including the strategic northeastern city of Kunduz on the 8th of August. US President Joe Biden has said the US military mission in Afghanistan will end on the 31st of August, arguing that the Afghan people must decide their own future and that he would not consign another generation of Americans to the 20-year war. With Bureau Inputs, World Today Desk, DD India.
Well, let's now try and understand what exactly is happening there on ground zero over the last 48 hours, especially when it comes to Taliban versus the Afghan forces there on ground zero. How have things played out in the last 48 hours, especially on August 9th, August 10th, after the US troops have slowly started withdrawing? This is what's happening on August 10th. The Indian government is going to evacuate citizens in and around Mazar-e-Sharif. That's going to happen in a little while from now, where the Indian people, Indian citizens, or Indian diplomats are going to be pulled out. That's not all. The German defense minister has clearly rejected calls when it comes to soldiers returning to Afghanistan, because they believe they have lost equal number of soldiers as they have lost in World War II, especially in Afghanistan, in the region of Kunduz, where German forces were second best to the American forces. The third point that's going to happen, this is going to be the most crucial area of interest. The US Special Representative for Afghanistan is going to hold talks, especially with the Afghan government and the Taliban, to stop the offensive. So this is something that's going to be interesting. That's people are going to watch out for, because this particular talks is where most of the things are hanging around. Now coming to August 9th, what exactly is happening on August 9th? Taliban has captured its 6th Afghan provincial post. So that's very important, because the 6th post here being captured, especially by the Taliban, slowly making inroad. This is after the security forces, they're clearly putting pressure, but then unable to stop the Taliban from making greater inroads. Moving on, the Taliban on August 9th itself, the insurgents had captured 3 provinces over the weekend. This is over the weekend that happened. This happened in the southern province of Nimroz, one in the northern province of the same, and one in the northeastern province, that's Taka province. That's where it took place. They've already taken the northern provincial capital of Kunduz and Lashkar Gah. That's the capital of Helmand province. So clearly Taliban in control, and the Afghanistan Defense Ministry claiming that 47 Taliban terrorists were killed and 25 others wounded in airstrikes that were conducted by the Afghanistan Air Force on August 9th. So this is exactly that's the developments that have taken place in the last 48 hours in Afghanistan, in that on-fighting between Taliban and the Afghan government. Let's now take a look at who's in control, especially when it comes to Afghanistan now in the present situation. Let's now get the map out of Afghanistan and try and understand. The red dots that you see on your screen are the places that have been controlled by Taliban. The blue dots that you see, or the blue spots that you see on the map, are government controlled, and the dots that are yellow are contested spots. These spots that we're talking about that are contested are clearly spots where there is ongoing battle between Afghan forces and the Taliban, and where Taliban claims that they have an upper hand. The Afghan forces claim it's equals, it's even Stevens, but clearly since they are contested, we're going to leave these yellow spots on the table. But clearly when one looks at this particular map, if you compare it on a 4-year on say a 2017 or a 2019 map to a 2021, things look pretty different, especially when it comes to Afghan forces or the US forces having a greater impact and a greater role, especially in controlling those red spots there on the map. Now there are 2 places that I'm going to highlight, especially when it comes to being taken over by Taliban and Taliban losing control. Let's first look at Herat province. This is on 9th of July. Look at the way the control was there. The red dots are much more. And look at this particular same spot of Herat province on 5th of August. The red dots have almost now taken over that region. This is when it comes to Herat, the province of Herat, that's now almost in control of the Taliban. But there is also a post that Taliban has lost. Let's now take a look at the next, next video wall, Nimroz. This is a post that was very much in control of the Taliban, but Taliban losing control. Afghan forces slowly claiming it back, and you see this blue dot suddenly rising and a small red dot as compared to 12th of July and 5th of August that you see Afghanistan forces slowly picking up pace, and Nimroz slowly, not exactly on a larger scale. I wouldn't still say that Afghan forces are controlling it, but they are slowly regaining lost ground. Now when one looks at the map of Afghanistan, especially when it comes to its neighbors, this is where it's a cause of concern. There are 12 spots here, or 12 border crossings that Afghanistan has. Of these 12 spots that you see, the cause of concern is 1, 2, 3, 4. There are 12 spots. 6 spots are in the control, or 6 international crossings are in the control of Taliban. That's the cause of concern, not only for the neighboring countries, but the world at large. Because 6 spots that Taliban controls, that's not all. Look at the 4 international airports, or 4 airports that they have. Kabul, going down there, Kandahar, up there to the south next to Iran, that's where Herat comes, and finally this is where Mazar-e-Sharif comes. That's where the evacuation of Indians are going to take place. All sports clearly not much of control. Clearly Kandahar very much in control of the Taliban. Even when you look towards Iran, that particular post there, Herat, very much in control of Taliban. So Taliban almost having 2 spots, 2 airports, 2 air bases there, very much in their control. So things not looking good there, especially when it comes to that infighting there. But all eyes will be on that talks in Doha, how things move about, especially when it comes to those talks. Are we going to see some kind of deadlock being broken? Can the Taliban be trusted when they come to the when they come to the table to negotiate, especially when it comes with the US representative? Can we look for that? It's going to be an interesting now where you sit across the table and try and work out the road ahead. Is it possible? That's the first question that that comes to our mind. Is it possible that Taliban can be trusted? Is it possible? Will Taliban look for a statement to be made and look for all the action that you've seen in the ground that's going to take a pause or hit a speed breaker? We'll try and analyze the situation there in Afghanistan with our expert this evening, Vishal Chandra, joining us, research fellow from IDSA, joining us this evening, trying to help us understand what exactly could Taliban see from here on. Good evening, sir. First things, the government today deciding to evacuate diplomats along with people that want to leave, especially Mazar-e-Sharif. How would you look at this particular development, especially when it comes to the Indian government?
I think there's a huge psychological side to the military offensive that Taliban has launched, particularly northern Afghanistan, because that was a relatively peaceful, has been a relatively peaceful area until almost 7-8 years back. And those are not areas which are known to be Taliban strongholds. So capturing areas in the north, particularly areas, provinces bordering the Central Asian republics, closer to Iran and Russia, and of course closer to Tajikistan and China and POK on the other side, sends a very strong message to the region on the one hand. Secondly, Taliban are now out in the open. Their agenda is pretty clear, and they have been sending conflicting messages. So the Taliban delegation based in Doha, they put on a moderate face and they try and convince the international community that they are open to dialogue, that they are open to talking to other political groups in Afghanistan, that they don't want to monopolize power, that they're willing to have a relook at some of the issues which have been of concern to the people outside Afghanistan and also to a large section of post-2001 Afghanistan. In return, they are offering security guarantees to all the neighboring countries. Basically, we are not going to allow our soil to be used against you so long as you stay impartial or neutral. The agenda being that they want to replace the current political structures, institutions, including the armed forces. So for now, they're encircling all the cities including the strategic border crossing points. They have already captured some of them, and also to cut Kabul from the provinces.
Okay.
So, but somewhere I think this is where Afghan army will have to step in and do the same to them. It's about encircling them back, though it's not going to be easy, but that's the minimum and maximum they can do in the given situation. And they need to cut the supply lines of the Taliban, just as Taliban have been trying to do in all these provinces.
Okay, how does one look at it, purely from an Indian perspective? There are many Indians who are working there. How does, one look at it from an Indian perspective? How, there is a plane that comes out today evening from Mazar-e-Sharif that's going to evacuate a lot of diplomats and Indians who want to board on that. But what about the other Indians who would be left or stranded there? What could be the options available for them, especially to make an eject from Afghanistan?
Well, they have to be very, very careful. I don't have the exact figures, but I think there must be around over 1,000 or maybe less than 2,000 Indians.
Okay.
Because many of them have been working on projects across Afghanistan, and they need not be working on Indian projects. There are Indians working on projects run by other countries or non-Indian agencies, NGOs, etc. So they really need to be very careful, stay in touch with the embassy, and I'm sure security advisories are being issued from time to time. And definitely they need to look for ways to, to avoid exposing them to a situation which could put them in serious trouble. As far as India's overall approach is concerned in the current circumstances, I think what we are seeing right now is a lot of diplomacy, a lot of behind the scenes negotiations. So perhaps as neighboring countries try and understand how they can work together and avert civil war. Anyway, the civil war is on, but how to ensure that gains that Afghanistan has made could be preserved and how various Afghan groups could be brought together. I think there's a lot of space for India to coordinate and for other countries, and I'm sure other countries would be very keen as the situation continues to deteriorate.
Okay.
Tehran, we already are into dialogue with Tehran and other countries. We have spoken to Russia, but I think perhaps we need to take note of the statements that are coming from Tehran regarding India's role in future Afghanistan.
When one looks at the overall picture, as Taliban captures city or provinces after provinces there, America seems to be getting into a muted response, if one may put it that way. Do you feel that that could be catastrophic, with the way things stand?
Well, it has been catastrophic because they needed to take a call, and they have taken a call that they are pulling out most of the whatever little remaining troops they have by 31st of August. What they're looking for is ways to work with Pakistan, because they need bases, they need areas from which they can carry out what they call over-the-horizon operations in support of the Afghan National Army, or in case if there's any threat from Al-Qaeda or any other international terrorist organizations. I think to an extent, Taliban have been able to convince, United States and maybe some of the regional countries that they are willing to box themselves inside Afghanistan. As of now, that's the message they are trying hard to convey to United States and other powers. But in the longer run, they need to realize that international legitimacy and international aid and assistance is not going to come to them if they continue to overrun Afghan cities, if they continue to carry out targeted attacks, and if they continue to commit grave war crimes. It's going to be more difficult for the international community and for the United Nations to be able to find ways to channelize international aid and assistance to Afghanistan.
Now when one looks at, the Taliban claiming victory, in provinces, and, US President Joe Biden seems rather, unaffected or, not ready to change his stance that he's already taken when it comes to withdrawal, with regards to the date that he set for the withdrawal of US troops along with NATO troops there. in case Doha talks fail, how could it all, what could be the fallout if Doha talks fail?
I think US assistance is going to be very, very critical.
Okay.
In June, when Afghan President Ashraf Ghani and Chairman of the High Council for National Reconciliation, Dr. Abdullah, when they visited Washington, President Biden announced that they will be committing $3 billion towards the maintenance of the Afghan national security forces, including Air Force, in 2021, and another $3.3 billion in 2022. Of the $3 billion, at least $1 billion is supposed to go to the Afghan Air Force and the special air wing of the Afghan army. I think without support from the United States and other countries, it's going to be very difficult for Afghan army to stay together, to hold together, and be able to protect not only the civilians, but the government in Kabul. So I think US is will continue to have a very important role, even from the point of view of intra-Afghan dialogue, because it was Ambassador Zalmay Khalilzad who got Taliban, and who has been trying to get Taliban and the Afghan groups together. And recently he made a statement saying that Taliban, they want alliance share in the power. Now that's a big question, because you've got Taliban sitting in Doha, Qatar, and then there are Taliban sitting in Pakistan who actually call the shots. And it's the military shura, the military commission of the Taliban, which outweighs the message that the political commission or the Taliban representatives sitting in Doha have been trying to send out. And it seems, this could be part of their strategy to send out conflicting messages, basically telling the international community to stay out, and at the same time imposing their agenda of monopolizing power inside Afghanistan. I think what they are trying to do is to capture Kandahar or enough number of cities, and thereafter, once the US forces move out by the end of this month, or sometime before or sometime after this month, to announce the restoration of the Islamic Emirate in Afghanistan.
But do you see somewhere, the trust factor, especially when it comes to Taliban, coming to the talking table, but can they be trusted on the bigger stage, especially, the previous instances where they have come to the table, but then they have, changed or flipped sides once they have gone off it?
Well, this will continue because, you see, they are going to ask for the maximum. And they will continue to overrun cities because that gives them a certain leverage, and it also helps them keep their fighters engaged.
Okay.
Now, it is said that there are around 75, 85,000 fighters. So how are they going to keep them engaged? So I think somewhere they have to, that makes sense from their point of view, to keep up the levels of violence. So and at the same time, they need to send out messages to competing militant Islamist groups that they have territory to themselves, and they are going to inspire other militant Islamist groups in the region. Secondly, they are not going to cut ties with other militant groups, because that's the only thing which gives them leverages over their neighbors, including vis-a-vis China or Central Asian countries or Russia in a much broader sense, or Iran. So I don't think Taliban, there is any fundamental shift as far as the Taliban thinking or strategy is concerned, but definitely they have become more adaptive, more tactical when it comes to dealing with the broader international community. Basically, they are looking for, they want things to reach to a point where they can dictate terms and conditions to the other groups in Afghanistan.
Okay. Now, when it also comes to, especially when it comes to rapid escalation, when it comes to violations being done, children also being attacked, especially by the Taliban in this infighting between Taliban and the Afghan government. How does one look at it, because this is not going to go, lying down, especially when it comes to UN bodies, and they're going to take serious note of it. That could put a lot of pressure, especially on the Taliban, to mend its ways.
Yeah, that's what I pointed to earlier, that it's going to be very difficult for them to negotiate with other Afghan groups, and more importantly, since they seek international recognition, talking to the wider, broader international community. Recently, after the UN special session was held on Afghanistan under India's presidency on August 6th, Taliban responded saying that they rather want the United Nations Security Council not to take sides, and instead asserted that it is their emirate which is the true representative of the Afghan people. I think Taliban, somewhere we need to take note of the fact that they have vulnerabilities. They have exposed their vulnerabilities from time to time. But the problem is that somewhere the neighboring countries, the neighbors of Afghanistan, are still not very clear how to respond to the challenge.
I think we leave it there. You know, it's a catch-22 situation, especially when one sits at the border and sees that particular story. But clearly a matter of grave concern. Let's hope that Doha talks, especially between the Taliban and the government there, with the US Special Representative in Afghanistan, clearly tabling or heading that particular talks, we see some light at the end of the day. Thank you, Vishal Chandra, for joining us this evening on World Today. Well, moving on to our next story, climate change is accelerating quite fast actually now, because we are not being able to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. According to a blistering report released by the United Nations, humans have heated up the planet by 1.1 degrees already, and probably we are going to reach 1.5 degrees within this decade. The UN report on climate change further said that the world is running out of time even to slow climate change.
Climate change is transforming Earth in ways that are unprecedented in thousands of years, and in some cases, hundreds of thousands of years. United Nations warned about this in a report. Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, or IPCC report, provides new estimates of the chances of crossing the global warming level of 1.5 degrees Celsius in the next decades. It finds that unless there are immediate, rapid and large-scale reductions in greenhouse gas emissions, limiting warming close to 1.5 degrees Celsius or even 2 degrees Celsius will be beyond reach. The report shows that emissions of greenhouse gases from human activities are responsible for approximately 1.1 degrees Celsius of warming since 1850 to 1900s, and finds that averaged over the next 20 years, global temperature is expected to reach or exceed 1.5 degrees Celsius of warming. For 1.5 degrees Celsius of global warming, there will be increasing heat waves, longer warm seasons and shorter cold seasons. At 2 degrees Celsius of global warming, heat extremes would be more often and reach critical tolerance thresholds for agriculture and health. Chair of Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, Ho-Sang Lee, said greenhouse gas levels in the atmosphere are already high enough to guarantee climate disruption for decades, if not centuries.
It is indisputable that human activities are causing climate change and making extreme weather events more frequent and severe. Second, it shows that climate change is affecting every region on our planet. And lastly, it explains that strong, rapid, sustained reductions in carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gas emissions would be required to limit global warming.
Basically, this is a strong message that we are changing the climate in an irreversible way. So basically, we are damaging the climate in such a way for the next generations that this will certainly make the socioeconomic difficulties in the future much worse than in our generation.
Scientists are hopeful that UN COP26 climate conference in Glasgow, Scotland, which will take place in 3 months' time, will try to wring much more ambitious climate action out of the nations in the world and the money to go with it.
The message of the IPCC report is crystal clear. We have to raise the ambition level of mitigation. The forthcoming COP26 meeting in Glasgow this November will be a critical milestone to combat climate change.
Drawing on more than 14,000 scientific studies, IPCC report gives the most comprehensive and detailed picture yet of how climate change is altering the natural world and what could still be ahead. The report mentioned that deadly heat waves, massive hurricanes and other weather extremes that are already happening will only become more severe. Unless immediate, rapid and large-scale action is taken to reduce emissions, the report says average global temperature is likely to reach or cross the 1.5 degrees Celsius warming threshold within a couple of decades. Clearly, the world is running out of time, as the report warns that even if emissions are slashed in the next decade, average temperatures could still be up by 1.5 degrees Celsius by 2040 and possibly 1.6 by 2060 before stabilizing. World Today Desk, DD India.
Meanwhile, wildfires continue to burn and challenge the authorities in many nations across the globe, from the Greek island of Eva to the lowlands of Bolivia, from Canada to California in the US West Coast. Wildfires are leaving a trail of destruction and debris in their wake. Let us take a look at this report.
The world is witnessing erratic climate conditions, from extreme heat wave to wildfire to heavy rain showers. Greece is burning and this is forcing evacuation. It's been more than a week, but Evia Island continues to burn. Fires burnt unabated in many parts of Greece, with the largest front on the island of Evia, east of the capital, which has so far forced the evacuation of dozens of villages and thousands of people. Large plumes of smoke blanketed the area as Greek and foreign firefighters fought to control blazing forests. One volunteer on the Greek island of Evia said his childhood memories were burning down.
We would have to bring certainly people to create the forests again, plant trees. It's very important right now. Everyone should do their part. They should donate to regrow the trees in North Evia. We should collect all the rubbish, because most of the fires here were helped by the rubbish we throw in the cliffs.
Another resident, a pregnant lady, described wildfires as a horror movie.
Well, I cannot explain to you like in the horror movie. You see the horror movie, you got afraid and you tell to yourself, okay, this is movie. But now this is not the movie, this is our real life. This is horror that we live for the last 1 week, almost 1 week. And you doesn't know if this horror will stop tonight or tomorrow or in 5 days. And everywhere in Greece it's the same problem, but here we have big problem.
A raging wildfire in North Carolina is now the second largest recorded in the state's history. The blaze destroyed a historic gold rush town and forced the evacuation of thousands. The burnt area is larger than the city of Houston. In Bolivia, wildfires are sweeping across eastern lowlands, putting at risk thousands of hectares of an area known for its rich wildlife that was hit by major fires just 2 years ago. The fires have been devastating the towns of Robor and San Macias in the department of Santa Cruz. Strong winds have made the task of controlling them more difficult. Firefighters and other institutions have been trying to douse the flames without success. In Canada, BC Wildfire Service released visuals of planned aerial ignitions of Flat Lake wildfire from 3rd to 6th of August in the Caribou. The ignitions are a tactic in wildlife suppression. The visuals aim to show how burning under controlled conditions helps extinguish the edge of a wildfire. In Brazil, a fire that started on the 7th of August and lasted for 2 days has burnt through almost 1,000 hectares of wetlands in Pocon, Brazil, according to a researcher. The effects of climate change are making it harder to control the situation, according to the Director of Science at the Amazon Environmental Research Institute, Annie Alencar. Alencar also pointed out that in the next few decades, temperatures could rise between 4 to 5 degrees Celsius, that is 39.2 degrees Fahrenheit to 41 degrees Fahrenheit in Brazil. In July, Brazilian President Bolsonaro banned most outdoor fires in the country for 120 days as a precaution and deployed the military to protect the region from fires and deforestation. In the Indian state of Bihar, the flood situation turned grim in the Gangetic basin of the state. Surging water of Ganga is engulfing low-lying areas. People are being moved to safer places. The water level of Ganga is above the danger mark and is maintaining a rising trend all along its course. All gates of Farakka barrage have been opened in view of the increasing water level of Ganga river. In India's Madhya Pradesh, relief work is going on in the flood-affected areas in the state. With Bureau Inputs, World Today Desk, DD India.
Well, Ambassador of India to United States, T.S. Tirumurthy, said that the UN Security Council high-level debate on maritime security chaired by Prime Minister Narendra Modi was path-breaking in many ways. He also said that India expresses gratitude towards UNSC member states for their engagement to adopt first comprehensive presidential statement on maritime security.
In this Security Council meeting, for the first time, a presidential statement on the holistic concept of maritime security was adopted. Besides piracy, armed robbery and transnational organized crime, the statement reaffirms in categorical terms that the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea 1982 sets out the legal framework for maritime activities. Overall, the presidential statement seeks to protect legitimate activities while countering the threat of current and emerging hostile, illegal or dangerous acts within the maritime domain. I thank all Council members for their constructive engagement during the negotiations on the presidential statement.
Well, moving forward, let's now take a look at the COVID battle and numbers from across the globe on how the fight is going on against coronavirus. Well, total cases across the world, 20 crore 43 lakh, that's the number. The one positive number when one looks at that screen, 18 crore 34 lakh recoveries across the world. Total deaths, 43 lakhs, 20,000 deaths across the globe with COVID-19. United States, the worst affected by the pandemic, both in terms of infections as well as fatalities. In terms of infections, over 3 crore 67 lakh people being infected by COVID-19. Deaths due to COVID-19 in the country now surpassing 6 lakh 33,000. While staying with the United States of America, coronavirus cases and hospitalizations in the United States are at a 6-month high, fueled by the rapid spread of the Delta variant across swaths of the country, grappling with low vaccination rates. What further alarms is that the number of children and adolescents hospitalized with COVID-19 is also rising across the country along with the total numbers. Pediatricians say that the Delta variant now comprises well over 90% of cases in the United States in children and adolescents, more so because children under the age of 12 years of age do not have access to the vaccine yet. The trend in US is also a warning for the world, as a trend health experts attribute to the Delta variant being more likely to infect children than the original Alpha strain. And with schools opening, the physicians have additional concerns. Nationwide, COVID-19 cases of all patients have averaged 1 lakh for 3 days in a row, up 35% over the past week. The surge of the disease was strongest in Louisiana, Florida and Arkansas. Well, moving to Canada, meanwhile, long delays were reported at the Canadian-US border on Monday as Ottawa finally opened doors to fully vaccinated American tourists for the first time in 16 months. The move caused a rush of tourists to travel north during the busy summer season. Canada barred all leisure travel from the United States in March 2020 due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Further, international travelers who are fully vaccinated will be allowed to enter in early September. Prior to the pandemic, tourism was the 5th largest industry in Canada, contributing $83.4 billion to the GDP and providing 1 in 10 jobs. World Lion Day is being celebrated today with an emphasis to raise awareness and gather support for the declining population and conservation. Asiatic lion is one of the 5 big cats that are found in India. The other 4 are the Royal Bengal tiger, Indian leopard, clouded leopard and snow leopard. Tweeting on World Lion Day, Prime Minister Narendra Modi said, and I quote, "The lion is majestic and courageous. India is proud to be home to the Asiatic lion. On World Lion Day, I convey my greetings to all those passionate about lion conservation. I would make you happy that the last few years have seen a steady increase in India's lion population. While I was serving as Gujarat Chief Minister, I had the opportunity to work towards ensuring safe and secure habitats for the Gir lions. A number of initiatives were taken which involve local communities and global best practices to ensure habitats are safe, and tourism also gets a boost." On a sports, Spanish club Barcelona continues to have a strong performance even without star striker Leo Messi, as the team defeated Juventus in a Joan Gamper trophy. Barcelona played aggressively from the beginning and dominated the entire 90 minutes. For Barcelona, Memphis Depay scored the first goal of the match in the 3rd minute. Martin Braithwaite then scored in the 57th minute of the game, and Ricky Puig's goal in the last minute ensured a 3-0 for Barcelona over Juventus. However, Juventus made a good start in the second half of the match and created many scoring opportunities, but rather failed to find the back of the net, as Barcelona won that match 3-0. On to tennis. 22-year-old Stefanos Tsitsipas climbs a career best world number 3 in the ATP rankings that were released on Monday. Stefanos Tsitsipas will compete in Toronto next week as a top 3 player for the first time, celebrating the achievement with Patrick Montglo, who often works with the young Greek at his academy in France. Tsitsipas has won 4,660 points in 2021. Well, let's now take a look at what else is making news around the world.
Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko struck a note of defiance on Monday on the first anniversary of an election which opponents said was rigged so that he could extend his long rule. Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko denied Monday that state repression exists in Belarus. The sanctions imposed on the election anniversary by the UK, US and Canada were not a response to horrific human rights abuses, but a sinister plot by the West to uproot and unseat him and to throw Belarus into chaos. Hong Kong leader Carrie Lam said on Tuesday that she supports the implementation of a mainland Chinese law in the former British colony to respond to foreign sanctions. Lam said she would prefer the law to be introduced through Hong Kong legislation rather than Beijing legislation. Local enactment would better clarify the legal framework around implementation. Maldives Foreign Minister Abdullah Shahid extended his best wishes to students of Maldives as they return to their classrooms post-COVID on Tuesday. Maldives is among the first countries in Asia to achieve this great milestone. He also congratulated teachers, parents and Education Minister Airshad Ali and the whole team for his remarkable achievement. In southwest China's Yunnan province, 14 wild elephants head south towards their protected habitat following a 1,300-kilometer trek that captured the public's imagination. An emergency committee set up to handle the wild elephants used electric fences and bait and laid artificial routes to ensure the elephants took the correct route. World Today Desk, DD India.
Well, time now to take a look at all the stories that are beyond the headlines.
Mexico's indigenous communities descended on the capital Zocalo Square to mark the International Day of the World's Indigenous Peoples. According to Mexico's Census Bureau, there are over 17 million indigenous citizens in the country from over 70 distinct indigenous peoples, making it the largest population of indigenous people in the Americas. Another group of folk dancers performed the chinelos with their distinctive white masks and extravagant costumes, said to be a parody on the complexion and appearance of Spanish colonizers. According to Coneval, Mexico's National Council for the Evaluation of Social Development Policy, nearly 70% of the indigenous population lives in poverty. Mexico has adopted the United Nations Declarations on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. The country's indigenous peoples are among its most vulnerable. London Zoo's newest lioness was given a treat to mark World Lion Day. Keepers at the zoo put 4-year-old Asiatic lioness Arya's breakfast inside a pair of edible papier-mâché globes. The lion arrived at the zoo in April as part of an internationally coordinated breeding program for the endangered species. World Lion Day is an independent campaign to raise lion conservation awareness worldwide. One of the biggest cities in the world now boasts a bird's eye view of the Brazilian concrete jungle. Sao Paulo's tallest building, the Mirante do Val, now features a glass floor on its 42nd level that is putting a fear of heights to the test. Called the Sampa Sky, this dizzying lookout will open to the public on August 8, but a select few were treated to a special preview at the 170-meter tall building. The Sampa Sky was inspired by Chicago's sky deck on the 103rd floor of the Willis Tower. London's famous Tower Bridge got stuck in its open position for the second time in a year due to a technical fault, leading to tailbacks of road traffic trying to cross the River Thames. The bridge, which allows boats to pass underneath by raising the road which crosses it, got stuck shortly before 2:45 p.m. Since 1976, the bridge's two arms or bascules have been operated by engines powered by oil and electricity, replacing the original steam-powered ones that dated back to the 19th century. It was the second time in a year that the bridge got stuck. In August 2020, it was closed for more than 24 hours when its bascules jammed in an open position. Australian researchers have created a hydrogel that could be used to treat Parkinson's disease and potentially other neurological conditions. Researchers from the Australian National University, in collaboration with the Flora Institute of Neuroscience and Mental Health, have developed a gel made up of amino acids which has proved effective in combating movement-related disorders of Parkinson's disease in rats. Parkinson's disease is a brain disorder that causes shaking and difficulty with walking, balance and coordination, and worsens over time. So far, the gel has only been tested on animals. However, researchers are hoping to start clinical trials within the next 5 years after the gel has been proven safe for human use. The hydrogel, when shaken, transforms into a liquid-like substance, making it easier for the material to be inserted into the brain through a small capillary. World Today Desk, DD India.
Well, time now to take a look at all the major happenings that took place on this very day in history.
On this day in the year 1913, the Treaty of Bucharest was signed between Bulgaria and the Balkan allies Greece, Serbia, Montenegro and Romania. The signing of the treaty marked the end of the Second Balkan War. After World War I, Turkey and the Allied powers signed the Treaty of Sivas on this day in the year 1920. Following the signing of the treaty, Turkey was relieved of control of much of the land ruled by the Ottoman Empire. It was on this day in the year 2000, a Polish court averted a political crisis and ruled that President Alexander Kwasniewski had not been an informant of the communist-era security service, averting a political crisis. In the year 2003, on this day, the first wedding in space took place between Yuri Malachenko, Russian commander of the International Space Station, and Yekaterina Dmitrieva on the ground in Texas. On this day in the year 2004, Libya agreed to pay $35 million compensation to more than 160 non-American victims of the 1986 bombing of a West Berlin nightclub. In the year 2005, on this day, Guinea-Bissau's Electoral Commission declared former army ruler João Bernardo Vieira the winner of a disputed presidential election. On this day in the year 2008, Oscar-winning soul singer Isaac Hayes passed away. He was one of the dominant black artists in the early 1970s. It was on this day in the year 2012, women's US 4 x 200 meter relay team set new world record as they won Olympic race. World Today Desk, DD India.
Well, that's all we have time for in this edition of World Today. But remember that fight against COVID-19 continues. So you need to follow 3 basic steps. That's called SMS. Sanitize your hands at all times. Wear a mask at all times. Maintain social distancing at all times. Remember to follow this. Also, do not forget to get yourself vaccinated. Remember, it's an important thing that you do when you get yourself vaccinated. And when you go to get yourself vaccinated, please do not forget to get one of your friends, one of your loved ones, one of your relatives along with you, so that more and more people can get vaccinated. Because if more and more people get vaccinated, remember, you are doing the society at large a big good. Because if more and more people get vaccinated, there will be safety, or there will be a web of safety that will be all around us. Remember, you and I get vaccinated, we stand a better chance of seeing a better tomorrow. So that's it from me and my entire team of World Today on this Tuesday evening. Bye-bye. Take care.